Rick and Morty and running around and Rick and Morty time.
Rick Sanchez is a brilliant scientist, but also an egotistical, callous, envious man, alcoholic, and exploitative grandfather to the long-suffering Morty Smith. So why is Rick such a Rick?
Play something.
God, Grandpa, you're such a dick.
I'm sorry, Summer. Your opinion means very little to me. Bird person?
Rick appears to fit the definition of a narcissist. Let's take a quick look at the criteria. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, a narcissist thinks he or she is special and can only be understood by other unique people.
Ricks have a very distinctive and traceable brainwave due to our genius.
A narcissist is entitled, expects everyone to comply with his wishes.
It's a family emergency.
Stop right there. If he leaves, I'm giving him an F.
He doesn't care.
Oh, man.
Takes advantage of others to achieve his own ends.
Uh-oh. When we get to customs, I'm gonna need you to take these seeds into the bathroom. And I'm gonna need you to put them way up inside your butthole, Morty.
My butt?
Put them way up inside there, as far as they can fit.
Oh, jeez,
Lacks
Rick.
empathy, doesn't appreciate the feelings and needs of others.
Hey, what the hell, Rick? What the hell? Man, I liked her. I really had something going there, Rick.
Yes, so I heard. You dodged a bullet, Morty.
Is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him.
As you know, Morty, I've got a lot of enemies in the universe that consider my genius a threat.
Exaggerates his own achievements and talents and expects to be recognized by others as superior. And is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, etc.
How do you know that
Whatever you're asking, the answer is I'm amazing.
Rick is also an alcoholic. Substance abuse is common in people with defined narcissistic traits, possibly because they tend to overestimate their own resilience to these substances and believe that nothing bad will happen if they abuse them.
Well, it's official. I had too much to drink last night.
Obviously, we're not doctors, but even if we were to diagnose Rick as a narcissist or attribute some of his behavior to his addiction, this doesn't really tell us why his personality developed this way. So ultimately, it's an unsatisfying answer to the question of why Rick is so Rickish. Rick feels that he's alone in the universe because he believes there's no one around him who can match his genius. There could be some truth to this idea, as other characters support it.
That he is the smartest man in the universe.
Yet, despite complaining that he has no mental peers, Rick chooses to spend most of his time with his intellectually mediocre grandson. So Rick is constantly frustrated with Morty for not keeping up with him.
Oh, why are they doing this? Well, what do they want?
Well, that would be obvious to you, Morty, if you'd been paying attention.
He does reveal in one episode that Morty's brainwaves help hide Rick's genius. But that doesn't explain why Rick doesn't seem to have a single friend who's anywhere near in the same intelligence ballpark. There's a case to be made that Rick prefers less intelligent companions so he can feel superior. From what we witness anyway, Rick's loneliness has less to do with his smarts and more to do with his abrasive personality and tendency to push people away. This is reflected in Rick's storyline with Unity, a creature that takes over a planet and becomes completely autonomous to eliminate the need to interact with anyone else.
In a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying.
In the end, she suggests that this is precisely what Rick does by keeping his loved ones at arm's length and treating everything as a joke. But whether or not his brains are the root of the problem, what is clear is that Rick has deluded himself into believing that it's because of his intelligence that he can't maintain lasting relationships.
Rick, the only connection between your unquestionable intelligence and the sickness destroying your family is that everyone in your family, you included, use intelligence to justify sickness.
In Rick's mind, being antisocial is proof of intelligence, while being nice and open is dumb.
Universe. Because I'm the smartest, and being nice is something stupid people do to hedge their bets.
After all he's seen and experienced, Rick has learned that it's a bad idea to trust anyone. To be open-hearted is to be naive, is to get hurt. At Bird Person's wedding, he shows a rare moment of vulnerability.
Friendship to love, and to my greatest adventure yet, opening myself up to others.
But when Tammy turns out to be an undercover agent for the Galactic Federation, Rick suggests that opening himself up to others was a mistake. It's even possible he's tried letting himself be vulnerable and got burned before. Maybe many times. And that would explain why his guard is always up.
Son.
How could you be so dishonest with this family?
Oh, should I have been more open and trusting and loving like, I don't know, my now dead best friend?
Rick struggles to make meaningful connections because human beings are essentially disposable to him. There are infinite versions of everyone he comes across, and anyone can be easily replaced. Just 6 episodes into the series, Summer, Beth, and Jerry literally are replaced when Rick and Morty have to abandon the family they started out with. This devastates Morty, but Rick doesn't seem to see it as a big deal. After all, how could Rick still see someone like Jerry as one of a kind, knowing that there's a daycare center out there full of countless Jerrys exactly like him? In fact, Rick and Morty don't even know for sure that they take home the right Jerry, because Morty lost their ticket.
Do you have 5126? I'm not sure. Morty. That's a Blips and Chits ticket.
What?
Way to go, Morty. Whatever.
Wait, what?
All right, come on, Jerry.
And in the opening credits of Season 3, Rick is seen casually shopping for a new Morty. In a world where another Jerry or Morty can just be picked up like another piece of furniture, an individual becomes fundamentally less significant.
Back off.
At the root of Rick's cynicism is an existential depression, caused by his awareness of these infinite families, as well as infinite dimensions and alternate versions of himself. Rick's actions are those of a person who's plagued by meaninglessness and doesn't place value on individual lives.
Tuna.
I just killed my family! I don't care what they were!
I don't know, Morty. Some people would pay top dollar for that kind of breakthrough.
This is how he can justify making an entire sentient race for the sole purpose of powering his car battery. The psychologist Erich Fromm wrote that the problem of human existence lies in the fact that we're mortal and self-aware. When you know that whatever you do, you're going to die, and so will everyone you love, it can be pretty hard to find meaning in life.
Again, you're welcome.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
For Rick, this problem is infinitely worse. It's not just that he's going to die, he's also aware that there are billions of other Ricks just like him. So even though he tries to assert his importance with the claim that he's much smarter than all the other Ricks,
You're the malcontent, the rogue. I'm the Rick.
his life is still just a blip on the time-space continuum, and he knows it.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
My slave. He's my slave.
This same awareness explains Rick's penchant for breaking the fourth wall and speaking directly to us, the audience.
Oh boy, what's the opposite of wubba-lubba-dub-dubs? Am I right, ladies and gentlemen? You guys kidding me?
A popular theory speculates that if Rick can wrap his genius brain around multiple dimensions and time travel, he can easily conceive of the possibility that his whole universe is a simulation, or even an animated TV show. So his Rickness could stem from knowing that we're watching him in this show.
Yes, that's the end of season 1!
Knowing that the events in your life are all being written to make an audience laugh, you'd be acutely aware that the characters in your life are not only not real, but also subject to the whims of a team of writers, a network, and viewers. Understanding all this would result in detachment, fear, and a sense of futility. The show hasn't yet revealed the full backstory of Rick and his wife, but it's implied that she didn't approve of his science fiction exploits and he abandoned her. When Beth scolds Rick about being reckless with alien creatures, she says,
And I know I sound like Mom, but I can't sacrifice this whole family's safety just because I'm afraid you'll leave again.
In Season 3, Rick explains that his wife died in an accident, and that this is what drove him to build his portal gun. This is soon revealed to be a made-up story, but it could imply that Rick really did abandon his original universe after some sort of tragedy, and this loss made him afraid of ever becoming so emotionally invested in someone ever again.
I'm not gonna help you, Rick.
That abandonment of the original universe may or may not have involved Evil Morty, who's the subject of numerous fan theories about Rick's past. The Evil Morty theory posits that just as Rick isn't interacting with his original Summer, Beth, and Jerry, he's not going on adventures with his original Morty. That Evil Morty is, in fact, Rick's original Morty. At one point, we see Rick cry while looking at memories of him holding a baby Morty, but Rick has been absent from the family for decades, so the baby Morty he's holding couldn't be the show's Morty. It's suggested that Evil Morty was the one killing off all the Ricks, so we know that Evil Morty holds contempt for Ricks of all kinds. This could mean that Rick abandoned Evil Morty before hopping over to the dimension we see at the start of the series. According to this theory, Rick doesn't want to get close to another Morty knowing that something could happen to him, just like something happened to the original Morty, for whom he clearly had affection. Regardless of the ultimate facts of the story, the character dynamics reflect the fundamental challenge of finding meaning in relationships when we know that they'll eventually end.
What people call love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. It hits hard, Morty, then it slowly fades, leaving you stranded in a failing marriage.
When we try to imagine what it would be like to have infinite families and infinite universes, to know that there are countless others out there almost just like us, to feel smarter and more special than everyone, but also to know that nothing really matters, we can start to wrap our heads around why Rick is such a Rick, and we might be too in his situation. His Rickness is actually an understandable response from a person who's lived through what he has and who's a big enough genius to really grasp the existential implications of those experiences. Despite all this, Rick still has a deep need for some affection and meaning, because while he has a much longer than average list of reasons not to care about anyone or anything, he's still human, and we can't go on living with a total absence of purpose or love.
Well, what's that, Rick?
I love my grandkids.
Aww.
Psych, just kidding. My new catchphrase is, I don't give a Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got. Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got.
In our next video, we'll explore Rick's character growth over the first 3 seasons to ask the question, has Rick changed? So subscribe to watch more.